Namaskar. This is Anandamurti 101. My name is Amal Jacobson, and this is a channel in which I try to talk about the basics of Anandamurti's Ananda Marga philosophy step by step. So today I want to talk about what is Dharma. And Dharma, I would say, is the most fundamental concept in Anandamurti's philosophy. You may have heard that word before. Hindus, for example, tend to define Dharma as duty, the duty that you owe to another person based on your relationship with them, the duty that you owe to society, to God, okay? Buddhists also think of Dharma in a completely different way. Often they talk about the teachings of Buddhism as the Dharma, and Anandamurti has another very specific understanding of it, okay? And so he points to the root word in Dharma, which is dri. And dri means that which upholds or sustains an object. In other words, what makes one thing what it is and not something else, okay? What makes fire fire? What makes water water? Okay, so the most common examples you're going to probably hear about Dharma would be, for example, the Dharma of fire is to burn. You can't think of fire without its innate burning capacity. You can't think of water without its wetness, okay? But of course, the much more important question for our purposes is, what is the Dharma of human beings? Human beings are not satisfied with just material things, okay? And so we live in a very basically insane societal setup in which we all know that this material world is never going to make us truly happy. And yet the entire society is built around trying to get as much of this material stuff as you possibly can, and trying to guarantee as much material security as you possibly can. And so I would say that this very basically and obviously sort of backwards setup has societal and psychological effects for humanity, because the most essential thing of what it means to be a human being is not to be somebody who exists very simply to enjoy things through the senses, to make as much money as possible, or to gain power over others. This does not relate to the Dharma of humanity. Human beings are not content with a little. They're not even content with a lot. Okay, one quote that I really love coming out of a show, actually Mad Men, you have this main character in Mad Men, which is about advertisers. And the main character is this sort of consummate advertiser. He can sell you anything, but of course he's deeply dissatisfied and unhappy. He says at one point, what is happiness? It's the moment before you need more happiness, right? And so, of course, in the show, advertising is what goes right in there to placate your anxiety and your desperate need for happiness by selling you something. And, you know, that's something that you see in the world that we live in today, okay? And so that need for happiness points to an infinite desire for true limitlessness, okay? And so what does it mean to be a living being in this cosmos? What it means is that you are seeking something limitless. An undeveloped being might seek that in an undeveloped way. You see that in the crude survival instinct of an animal or even a bacterium. If you apply heat next to a bacterium, it's going to go away from that heat. It's going to respond to the stimulus, right? But when you're talking about a person with all of that complexity and inscrutability, then you're talking about something that will never be satisfied with mere material gain, okay? And so Anandamurti would say that that limitlessness that you are seeking as a human cannot be found through the senses. It cannot be found through the gratification of some crude desire, because each of those desires has a much, much deeper and greater desire hiding behind it, okay? And so the sorts of things that people seek out in their lives through escapism, whether it's in a healthy way, like going to the movies, or in an unhealthy way, which you see with people who are suffering from addiction issues. Okay, you're seeing that there is a much deeper desire that is not being satiated through the senses, through the material world, through the external world out here. Because everything out here has an expiration date attached to it. It is a limited object in the world. A limited object has a boundary. It has a beginning. It has an end. Okay? And so any happiness derived from an object out here has an expiration date attached to it. The happiness and satisfaction you feel from enjoying this object has a beginning and has an end. It is limited. It is not unlimited. And there's no number of limited objects that can fill that giant hole that you have inside you, because that hole is fundamentally spiritual in character. Okay? And so the Dharma of human beings is to knowingly seek that limitlessness. And to knowingly seek that limitlessness is something that is not material in character. It's not even purely psychological in character. That is a psycho-spiritual journey that has to be taken internally, not externally. You will only find that limitlessness within your own self, in the divine spark that is innate within your own being. There, at the ground of your own being, you can find something that fulfills you in a way that goes beyond the changing ephemeral character of the external world out here. That is what it means to practice Dharma in this sense that Anandamurti teaches. It means to build your life in such a way that you prioritize that psycho-spiritual inner journey, so that your life isn't about keeping your head above water, trying to make a little bit of money to survive, trying to support the people around you, and then maybe carving up 5 minutes at the end of the day for some meditation practice. Anandamurti would say that that is backwards. Your life is about that journey. You took birth as a being in this universe to continue that spiritual quest inwards. And therefore, to live a dharmic life means to purposefully, intentionally create a life that is built around what are the things that can bring me and the rest of this world, all the living beings that I exist in community with, how can we move together on this path towards this inner innate limitlessness? Okay? And so all the things that you hear about in Anandamurti's philosophy, all of the socio-political aspects, everything he talks about regarding ethics and morality, even regarding psychology, all of it grows out of this initial concept of Dharma. To Dharma, what makes a human being, and not some other thing, not a plant, not an animal, is the ability to purposefully continue that journey towards that limitlessness that can only be found within your own innate spiritual ground of being, and not leading a life in which we waste our time and waste our efforts running after things that will not sustain us in the long term, that will not satisfy us in the long term, and very likely lead us towards more dissatisfaction, more unhappiness. And what you see happening in the world, you know, when you look at the ecological problems that we're facing today, the political problems that we're facing today, the fact that humanity is now run up against the capacity of this planet to handle human beings, okay, all of these come out of the essential insanity of trying to fill an infinite, unlimited desire with limited, finite objects of the world. That infinite growth model that you see in modern capitalism leads to disaster. moral disaster, social disaster, psychological disaster, spiritual disaster. Okay, that is the opposite of the Dharma that Anandamurti is teaching. So I will be exploring this concept more in future videos as we go into other aspects of Anandamurti philosophy. If you have any topics that you would like me to focus on in particular, please comment, like and subscribe, and hopefully this will be a space where we can go a little bit deeper into Anandamurti's sublime philosophy step by step. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you. Namaskar.